guys, welcome back to my channel and to my April reading wrap up. So in April I read 14 books, which isn't that great for me, but it's not too bad. I was in a slump at the beginning, but I slowly got out of it by the end and started to catch up. So I have only read 4,967 pages. Why did that just turn on? Give me a fright. And my average rating was 3.96, which is the best that it has been all year, so I'm so happy about that. It was a really good month for me in terms of ratings, so we have some good books to talk about today. However, we didn't have any 5 stars that weren't rereads, so that's kind of sad. So the first book that we have that I read this month was Crush by Tacey Wolfe. This is the second book in the Crave series. This is like a fantasy, paranormal, has all of the vampires, werewolves, witches, all that good stuff in it. Set in a boarding school where we follow a supposedly human girl who has to move there after the death of her parents because her uncle runs the school, and they're hiding from her that this is a magic school with paranormal, so she thinks she's just around weird people. Obviously, she's going to uncover that secret, so we follow her through this journey. I don't want to say too much about Crave. Which one was it? Crush. Because I don't want to spoil anything for the first book, but I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really, really good. I enjoyed seeing the characters continue their development and continue their storyline. I gave it a 4 stars. I thought the writing was good. I thought it definitely lived up to the first one. If you liked the first one, you're gonna like the second one. If you didn't like the first one, you're not gonna like the second one. Pretty simple. I'm really excited to move on to the third book in the series. The only criticism I have is these books are a little on the long side. Like, this book was 700 pages and I just don't think it needs to be 700 pages. But other than that, I think it's pretty good. There is a main love interest, and then side people who aren't supposed to be love interest, but I much prefer some of the side characters to the main person. I was really into the main love interest in the first book, but as the second book's gone on, he's kind of annoyed me. So I'm excited to see if the series sticks with him or not. The second book that I read was Learn My Lesson by Katie Roberts, which is the second book in the Villains series, the Wicked Villains, I think. I didn't love the first book, but a lot of people don't like the first book, so I kind of just assumed I was not on my own there, and so didn't really worry about it. This book is much more loved by people, and I still disliked it deeply. I thought it was incredibly boring. I gave it 2 stars, and that was me being generous. I literally had to switch over to the audiobook and was like, don't care, hurry up. The reason I haven't given it a 1 star is because there's nothing outwardly wrong with it. You know, the writing style's fine. It's nothing compared to her other books. I'm a massive Katie Roberts fan, but this series I've decided I'm not going to continue with. I just don't care at all about it. The series is set around fictional characters from Disney and stuff, but they're humans, and smutty. It's just not my cup of tea, I guess. The concept is cool, but the outcome of the series is just not it for me personally, so I'm just gonna let it go, and I'm glad I'm not continuing anymore. But they are super short for people who are interested in reading them. When I say super short, this one was 250 pages, so not that short, but not long either. This was Maybe in Another Life by not Emily Henry, by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Taylor Jenkins Reid has been a great author for me majoritively. I loved 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I liked Daisy Jones and the Six. I think it came and did what it meant to do. Malibu Rising wasn't for me really. I gave it a 3 stars. I didn't dislike it. I thought it was fun, but I didn't love it. So this one and One True Loves and the other one, the marriage one, are 3 that I'm really eager to pick up recently, and I think they're getting published in the UK. Well, the third one, the wedding one, whatever that one's called, it's not published yet apparently, but obviously I know it's been out in the US for ages. So if anyone knows what's going on there, is it just a official UK publishing? Let me know. But I want to read them. So I picked up this one first because it was the one that my library had on audio, and wow, I thoroughly enjoyed this more than I thought I would. I ended up going with a 4.5, it just didn't reach a 5 for me, just something was missing. But I read this entirely in one sitting. I was so invested in these characters' lives. So we follow Hannah, who, she's kind of just confused in life. Her family moved away at a young age from America to London, and she didn't go with them. They kind of abandoned her really. I don't really like her family at all. And yeah, she's kind of since then kind of been a bit confused. She had to live with her best friend's family as a child, and then since then she's been moving around state to state, city to city, trying to find somewhere that she feels at home and feels right for her. And she's like 29 now, and she's like, I'm done. So she ends up moving back to LA, where her best friend Gabby, I think, lives, and staying in her guest room. And what happens is she goes out this night and she finds her old boyfriend Ethan, and you find out why they broke up. It was just like kind of like miscommunication, a bit of like long distance, so they ended up breaking up. And we follow two separate timelines from this party. One where she decides to stay with the party and ultimately ends up getting back with Ethan, and the other timeline when she leaves the party and as a result does not end up staying with Ethan that night and potentially not ending up with him. So we follow two separate timelines that follow completely different stories. Like the same girl, Hannah, but she goes through totally different things in her life, but they end up in the same place with different outcomes. I can't say anything more because I don't want to spoil anything, but I thought, I've got goosebumps actually thinking about this book. It was so well done. I thought it was going to be boring basically, because there's a lot of similar scenes, but the outcomes are different from them, but they were not boring in any way, shape or form, except for the last chapter. They're at this party and you quite literally get word for word the same party speeches, and I'm like, I'm bored now. I don't want to hear the same thing. But other than that, I really loved this story. I thought it was so good. I thought it was such a fascinating concept and done really, really well. I think Taylor Jenkins Reid is a talented author for sure. And it's just her plots that sometimes like I don't gel with, like Malibu Rising. But this one, where it's like around normal people, not famous people, amazing, absolutely phenomenal. And I really hope her other book, One True Loves, and After I Do, that's the other one, I hope I love them as much as I love this one. And then the book that got me out of my slump was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I was lucky enough to get an arc of this, so if you would like to see my full thoughts as and when I'm reading, I will link my arc vlog up there for you to watch. This got me out of my slump. This was good. This again, I read in one sitting. These romances are genuinely doing so good for me right now. You follow Nora? Yeah. You follow Nora, who is this like publicist agent. Is she a publicist agent? I don't really know. But she's in control of talking to this author and reading her books. And then Charlie is perhaps another publicist agent. I don't know. And they chat in the beginning of the book and he says, I hate the book. I think it's terrible. It's just not my cup of tea. She's like, what do you mean this is an amazing book? Flash forward 2 years, which I didn't love. And we see Nora's sister loves this book. And this book is set in this small town called Sunshine Falls or something like that. So they decide to book a trip to go there and stay for some time. And when she gets there, she sees Charlie there and she's like, I had to get on a plane to come to this place. Like, how is he here? Like, the likelihood of this happening is 0. And I won't say anything more, but it is such a cute small town romance. I really like Nora and I really like Charlie. I didn't like the sister. I like their bond, but I didn't like the sister that much. She was a bit boring. But overall, I can't explain it. It's a rundown town, so it's even more atmospheric than a normal town that you would see in a book. I just can't explain it. I really love this book. If I could encourage you to pick up any of the releases this year, it would be this one. I did give it a 4 stars because I felt like the second half dragged a little bit. But now, if I'm being honest, I think I'm going to change that to a 4.5 because I was being harsh. I truly was being harsh. So let's go with a 4.5 for this one. It was so good. So good. And I definitely want to pick up a physical copy because I can see myself rereading this in the future. This next book is a wild one. This next book is The Watchers by A.M. Shine. Let's start with the negatives at first because this did a full 380? Yes. So stick with me for the bad stuff till we get to the good stuff. This book started very, I was umming and ahhing. It was close to a DNF. The writing style is weird. It kind of starts quite abruptly and it's very boring, I'll be honest, at the beginning. Not a lot happens. I was like, can something please happen? Which I know you're thinking, well, I don't want to get through 50% of a book for it to get good. But as I got to the 50% mark, I started to realise how much atmosphere had been building and how I'd completely submerged myself into this world. And it wasn't slow and boring. It was setting some seeds and building eeriness, and let me assure you it did that, because this is terrifying. So when I initially finished this, I gave it a 4 stars. I was torn between a 3.5 and a 4. I stick with that rating of a 4. However, I do feel it is one of those books that I will never stop thinking about, and I will read over and over again because I am absolutely terrified to my core. So I read this exactly a month ago now, and I tell you, I am terrified. The whole concept is this woman breaks down. I can't remember her name. Mina breaks down in this woods and basically just goes for a walk trying to find somewhere because her phone doesn't work. Nothing works, which is very weird. And she comes across this like cabin. This woman's like, please run, come in. So this woman comes in, she's like, you just made it. I was about to bolt the doors. And she's like, don't bolt me in. And she's like, no, you need to stay. And suddenly there's creatures screaming. These creatures are known as the Watchers. And this bunker is the only safe place from the Watchers, and they can see in through the windows at night, but you can't see out. They're like mirrored. You have no idea where this bunker has come from. But everybody says there's no way out of here. Once you're in, and the only time it's safe to go outside is in the light, and you have to be back inside at dark or they'll kill you. And now, every single night before it gets dark, I am terrified. I have to run and shut all my blinds before it gets dark. And if I forget to shut my blinds, like I keep forgetting to shut my blinds in this book room because the like cable's really high. So I have to like kind of climb on my desk to get it. I can't come in here until Liam comes and shuts it for me. Like when he gets home from work, and he gets home from work quite late. Oh my goodness, I'm actually terrified of the outside. I used to go out at night and like fill my bird feeders in the dark. I can't do that now. I have to do it in the light or it's not happening. This like has stuck with me. Like that's probably a negative thing because now I'm terrified. And when I finished it, I was so scared that I was sat there with all the lights on, just like, no, I can't do this. It was so creepy. Now, a lot of people are probably going to read this and not have the same reaction and be like, you're a wuss, which is a fair enough point. But for me personally, I found this terrifying. Another negative I would say is Mina is definitely a woman written by a man. I didn't know AM, Shine, or who they were. And I started reading it and I went, this is a woman written by a man. And then I went and checked and it turned out AM, Shine is a man. So I was like, makes sense. Definitely those vibes. I'm not like other girls, you know, that kind of thing. But not in a way that makes it unreadable. I also can't get over the end. I don't know what's real and what's not. I feel at the last like couple of sentences quite literally had me shocked. I'm so thing about this book right now. It's not the best book in the world. However, it is literally one of the books that stuck with me most. And after a month, I still cannot stop thinking about this and I need to reread it because I'm in shock. If you have not read this book, please do, because I need to know if it's as scary for everyone else as it was for me and if it sticks with everyone else as much as it stuck with me. So yes, it's not the best written book in the world. It's not like the best paced book in the world, but I still love this book and will be rereading this consistently because terrifying, in my humble opinion. Definitely recommend, and I'm so excited to pick up AM Shine's next book, The Creepers, not related to this book, when it comes out. I'm so excited. Probably like one of my most anticipated releases now of the year. So the next book that I picked up in the month of April was The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. A lot of people are talking about this right now. It's very popular, especially on Book Talk. And I came across it when I was doing my binge on my birthday. So I picked it up and I read it. This was when I started during my slump. So I must say, like, it didn't have the best chance because I was slumping. However, I liked it. I gave this a 4 stars. Please don't get me wrong when you hear some negative things. I really, really enjoyed it. I think that Zara and Rowan had a realistic romance. I think so many times we read romance books that like have all these moments that are so unrealistic, whereas this is what I would want from a romance. It is what I think we can actually aspire to, which is quite ironic considering it's set in Disneyland, or Dreamland, sorry, don't get sued. Dreamland. But if you put it in like a normal context of 2 people, it does come across quite realistic, which did mean it didn't quite have the serotonin that I get from most romances. So it didn't like make me read it in one sitting or anything like that. And I do have this issue with romances. If I don't read them in one sitting, I don't like them as much the next day. It's something I've always struggled with. It's as if I take myself out of the story and therefore I don't have that like serotonin in my body anymore to keep loving it the way that I was. So that could be a reason that I didn't love it, was because I was slumping and didn't want to read it in one go because it's so long. I still gave it a 4. It's probably like a 3.75, but I'm not being that finicky, so we're sticking with a 4. I still really enjoyed it. I think the very slow paced, if you enjoy seeing a lot of moments between the characters, that's great. Like a lot of mundane moments, that is great for you. I do as well. So it wasn't too much of an issue for me, but it can be very slow and boring for sure. It is a 450 page book. I mean, is the pacing truly going to be great? Probably not, when a book is that size already. But the main thing I loved about this book was the representation. So the sister of the main character, Zara, she has Down syndrome, and so throughout the entire book, Zara is trying to like campaign for Dreamland to be more inclusive of people with disabilities, physical, mental, anything like that. She's trying to be inclusive for those people, and I absolutely love that representation because it kind of just spoke on how all places like that in the world, all corporations aren't as inclusive as they should be. It was a very interesting thing. It also gave me the vibes of the inheritance games, but without the mystery, because the grandfather leaves each brother a task to complete in order to inherit the company. And so it's similar vibes to that. Like the whole time I was like, oh, very inheritance games. I mean, that is where the similarities end, but the point still stands. But yeah, I enjoyed this. I definitely enjoyed it, but I think a lot of people prefer the second one, Terms and Conditions, so I'm really excited to get to that one. I'm not going to get the next ones out because they're on the bottom shelf, but next I reread all 4 volumes of Heartstopper. I think me and everyone else on BookTube at this point did this month. Because of the Netflix series that came out, me and Connor decided to read them all in one day and then binge watch the series at night, and it was amazing. I absolutely loved them. They were all rereads. I gave them all 5 stars. My only 5 stars in the month, but they weren't rereads, so does it really count? What's quite funny is the 4th book was my favourite when I first read them, whereas now it is my least favourite, so that's interesting. I mean, still 5 stars. I have nothing to say other than Nick and Charlie are my life. I love them, but I really don't want to talk about them too much because number 1, I've raved about this series already, and number 2, I'm sure everybody's sick of hearing about from Twitter, so let's move on swiftly. The next book I also read for my ARC reading vlog, so you go and check that out if you fancy seeing a more in-depth analysis, but that was These Twisted Bonds Analysis. Who do I think I am? Review. Analysis. Oh my goodness. These Twisted Bonds by Lexi Ryan. This is the sequel to These Hollow Vows. I gave it a 3 stars. I am disappointed by the story. It's definitely a very different feeling to the first book. So the first book was very light-hearted, had a love triangle, it was very much selection vibes. It was fun. This book was much darker, less of a love triangle and more of a you're a villain and I love the other villain who's not much of a villain. I don't know if I like anyone in this book. Like in the first book, Finn had my heart, okay? I loved Finn with my whole entire being, and in this book I was like, It's a completely different thing when a book does a 180 and changes its style. This book was much more reminiscent of other YA fantasies that I've read that I think people would enjoy, but not These Hollow Vows. I still recommend the series completely, the duology, but I do have my issues. As I said, I was not invested as much in the love interests in this story, and I didn't get as much serotonin from them as I did in the first book, but I did much prefer seeing more of the character development of Bree as an individual as opposed to her development with men. My main positive of this book is Misha. There is this very small character called Misha. He's just this man who owns a place. Is it a kingdom? Is he a prince? Is he a lord? I can't remember. I'm going to require, please Lexi Ryan, this is my request to you, I'm going to require a spin-off series of Misha because him and his wife are fascinating to me and I think they have so many stories to tell. I need more Misha content, like short story, series, standalone, I'll take anything you will give me. Misha is the most amazing character. I just had every feeling for him on this planet and I love him so much. My biggest issue with the story was that it was so slow for 75% of the story. Nothing major happened. I was like, oh my goodness, let's move on. And then we got to the last 20% and everything that could possibly happen in the entire duology, not just the book, happened in this 20% and was resolved in the 20% and ended in the 20%. Like, I was baffled by everything going on. It was so quick. It all just was like, oh, boom, 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 done. I had whiplash. It held no suspense because of how quickly it happened. It held no repercussions because the book was so close to ending and the series was so close to ending. Like, there wasn't a third book. It just was a big letdown for me in pacing, for sure, and that was my biggest issue with it. Okay, the next book was a disaster. The next book that I read was Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwin. I gave this a 1 star, and I do have to disclose that I did not listen to the last hour of the audiobook, so what is that, 30 pages? You couldn't pay me to read it. This book was a 1 star. It was one of the worst books I've ever read. Not for plot, the plot was fine. The plot was interesting, actually. I was quite invested. This book is awful. It has some of the most graphic rape I've ever read about. So please, for the love of God, if you're going to read this book, please understand that there are some serious trigger warnings for rape, child sexual assault and attempted rape, murder, everything. Now, it's really hard to tell you what some of the worst parts of this book without spoiling it, so I won't. But there is a scene where, unfortunately, our protagonist does experience such graphic rape that I was skipping the book. For the 30-second skip on Audible, I was skipping it because it was making me cry. I felt sick. I was really upset, and I'm getting upset thinking about it now. It was not a nice scene to read, and I understand that sometimes people put that in books, but I just don't think this one needed to be. Not as bad as it was. But then the main man comes, like the love interest, comes, and while she is still somewhat in the scenario that she is in, she's not physically moved or unblindfolded or anything, she begins to question if she is good enough for him, if he will now see her differently now that she's violated, or defiled. He then says something, she's been kept captive for months, or 2 weeks actually, I think it was, I might be remembering wrong. It felt like months that I was reading it for. She's been kept captive and barely fed for these 2 weeks. She was literally left to die, like she was around other women's dead bodies, okay? And he literally says, oh my God, you're skin and bone, but you're still beautiful to me. And then starts to touch her. Like, I quite literally looked like this when I was reading it. Like, my eyes are watering. Like, I just couldn't believe the scene I was listening to. And this wasn't a, look how gross men are situation. The author thought this was okay. Unless something happened in the last 30 pages that completely switched that, which I don't think it did. I am horrified by this story. I am horrified that this exists. I'm well aware that there are books with hard scenes like these in them, and that's just kind of what happens in some books. No, the way this was handled was vile, and if you are a survivor of anything like this, it's going to be one of the worst things you could read for yourself and your mental health and your opinions on yourself. Like, it is harmful to all of the people reading this book, especially all of the women. It is harmful and it portrays a wrong view. Anyway, I was lucky that I had a good reading month to make up for that terrible shit show, to be honest. I don't recommend. I wasn't aware of the scenes that were in it. If you are interested in reading it, that is fine, but at least you know now what you're experiencing going in. Me and my friend Lauren on Twitter, writer Lauren, we decided that we're going to read 2 smut books every single month, one at like the beginning-ish of the month, one at the second half of the month. Yay. And like, I'm making it my mission to cut down my smut TBR on my Kindle because it is in triple digits. So we're working on it. So we decided this month we were starting it at the second half of the month. So this first book that we decided to pick up was Hot Vampire Next Door by Nikki St. Crow. Now this, I must say, like, the writing is not amazing in this, but it's written on something, the author like said something, it's written as episodes on Amazon, but it's meant to be like as Wattpad. Apparently there's something on Amazon that lets you do that. So it's not like written as a consecutive novel, so I did take that into consideration when I was reading this. I did give it a 4 stars, but it's nothing mind-blowing. It's just like an easy read, like 4 stars. It did what it was trying to do. It served. I can't remember anything at all, to be honest. I do plan on finishing it. There are 3 books in this series. The next one comes out at the end of this month, so I think we're reading the second one now-ish, and then the third one when it comes out at the end of the month. And I'm excited about it, I'm not gonna lie, but I don't remember anything. I do remember the male love interest does call the main character Mouse as a nickname, and I mean every 5 seconds we hear the word mouse, and it's really annoying. But that's my only complaint. I have nothing else to say because I remember nothing. It is like a paranormal romance where the next door neighbour is a vampire, go figure, and she loves him. Does she love him? Oh my god, I remember nothing. Lauren's going to have to give me like a debrief on what we just read a week ago. So the next book is one I had no intention of picking up, but it just came on my library and I was like, I'll give it a try. And that is The Scribd Affair by Nina de Gramont. This is a very fascinating premise. So we are following the disappearance of Agatha Christie from the perspective of the husband's mistress. Wow, what a concept. This is a very slow-paced book. That is my biggest negative, but I read it in very small increments. I think it took me 2 weeks to read, and not because it was bad, but because I listened to the audio in half-an-hour time slots driving places. It was just like I'm going to the Starbucks drive-thru, I'll put this on for 20 minutes and listen to it, which really actually helped with the slow pacing of the story because I was only getting it in small batches instead of a big load of boring storytelling. So bear that in mind. But I think the story was fascinating. I thought the end was really, really cool. I like the message behind the story, behind the book. I have nothing much to say at all. I absolutely despised the mistress in this book. Oh yeah, the mistress's name is Nan. And I hated her so much because I was like, you slept with a married woman and then was going for lunch with the married woman. Obviously I hated the husband more, obviously, it's the husband's fault. But you know, she knew about her and stuff. And I hated her so much. I thought, how can we redeem her? Like, it's really hard to hate a main character of a story or the narrator of a story. But no, she was redeemed. The storyline that she has is both heartbreaking and mesmerizing. I really, really enjoyed learning about her more than I enjoyed Agatha. I think the story is actually about Nan, not Agatha really. Agatha Christie just ties into it. But it was so interesting to see this spin on the disappearance of Agatha Christie. It was very fascinating. Obviously all fictional, but in my head it's completely real now, and that is truly what happened. Definitely a fun one, and I definitely recommend if you're into those kind of books and you're willing to read a slower book, because it is slower paced. But yeah, I enjoyed it, I gave it 4. The next book that I read was my highly anticipated release, Elektra by Jennifer Saint. I absolutely love Ariadne earlier on in the year, so I was really excited to pick this up. And now I did enjoy this book, I did like it. I read the entirety of this book on stream, doing live sprint, so that's still up if you want to use that to sprint with, I guess. So I read this on the entirety of those streams, and it was okay. It was good. I enjoyed it. Now, we don't just follow Elektra, and that was one of my criticisms was why is it called Elektra when she is not the main character of the story? The main character of the story is Clytemnestra. I can't say these names. But we follow her, Cassandra and Elektra, and it's kind of like in different timelines really, from the different perspectives, but it's a bit confusing. It's never like disclosed. But the writing in this is beautiful, but not in the way Ariadne was. My most disappointing aspect of this book was the fact that it was missing all of the beautiful quotes that was in Ariadne. Like, Ariadne was filled with these quotes that were so empowering to women, and I literally was constantly tabbing all of these beautiful, empowering, motivational, powerful quotes, and this one didn't have any. And something I was really unhappy with this book about, maybe it's all down to interpretations, this is how I interpreted it. I felt that this book was more empowering to men and women fighting men's battles and fighting for men, and even men who have caused injustice and are terrible people, rather than empowering women like Ariadne did. So it wasn't a good time for me. It was not a fun, fresh, funky time because we love women in this house. So yeah, I didn't dislike this book. It does sound very negative. It was not that way. I did still enjoy it. Gave it 3 stars. At the end of the day, it is a good book, but it has nothing on Ariadne. And if you were going to pick up one or the other, I would 100% recommend you go with Ariadne instead. But still a good book. Don't let me sway you off of it. I still think it's a nice, fun read. And I will still pick up anything Jennifer Saint releases in the future. But that is all of the 14 books I read in April. Now that I've upped my review of Book Lovers, let's have a look if it's adjusted my rating to be in the 4 stars, because that would make me so happy. My average rating is exactly 4.00. I've hit the 4s for an average rating. Yes, guys, we've done this. I'm so proud of us. This was such a good reading month for me, even though I was in a slump, I mean, in terms of rating wise. Hopefully now my slump is kind of etching away. I'm going to have a better time of it in May and read some of my birthday books that I'm so excited to get to. So thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.